Hello, this is Gary Marr from Glenville Community College. This screencast is for my CIS133DA students. And in the screencast, we're going to cover Unit J, which specifically is on creating and processing web forms. Now, before we start, let's do a little bit with definitions and background. Forms have been around for a very long time. Paper forms and the filling out of these paper forms have been the way many systems have captured information. Manual systems and also automated systems. In fact, I can remember many systems when I first started in computing where the information was written down in a paper form, and that paper form was captured in the computer by a data entry operator so that we could then access that information later on in reports and other things that were connected with that system. Web forms aren't much different, except that one of the things you might want to take into consideration is if your organization has a paper form, you might want the web form to look pretty much the same. I think most of us know how forms work. When they're on paper, it's usually processed top to bottom, left to right. You fill in the boxes, the checkbox, the radio buttons. Well, the same kind of options exist in a web form. We can have text areas, text boxes, buttons, pull-down boxes, check boxes, etc. These are called web controls. Now, before we start the form, it's probably important that we lay it out. If you go back to Unit A where we talked about wireframes and storyboards, that same kind of activity is valuable when you're designing the form, especially again when you want the form digitally to look the same as that paper form your organization may use. So the first step in this process is to design the form. Determine which field controls you want to use as part of that form. Obviously, if you're capturing information, it's going to be in a text field or a text box or a text area. Text field, text box are pretty much synonymous. Text area is usually a little bigger. It's more for paragraph or paragraphs of information, whereas a text box is usually one piece of data. You want the flow to be logical, and by that, I think that if you're used to using any kind of forms on the internet or even these paper forms, there's a flow to it. Usually the cursor starts in the very first field, and you move across left to right, and then down the page to fill it out with buttons either on the left side of the screen or at the bottom of the screen to either update, add, delete the information that you're entering in to on the form. We have labels, field sets, legends. These are all elements that exist in HTML. And this screen here will show you what each one of those would be if the page was rendered on the screen. Field set legends, these are new to HTML5. The ability to set the input element to make it a password or a text area has existed for a while, but with HTML5 they've added some new elements to give us more options built into our web pages as we design them in HTML. With a form, you're going to be using the form and field set tags. The form element itself identifies how much of that page exists for that particular form. You can actually have multiple forms on the same web page, although we're not going to do any of that in this class. Field set is a block of information that includes a legend that better describes the information and mostly kind of blocks it off too, makes it easier to understand. Visually, it's very intuitive. You get some sample code here. We also have sample code that we can look at from the actual notepad. I threw some of this stuff up here. Here's a form tag. With the action results.html, what the action does is on a submit action, this is the page you would navigate to. I'm sure we'll see a submit action down below on one of the input tags. But there's a field set, there's a legend, there's a label, and there's the actual input tag. Input tag has been around for many years. This is type text, so it's going to be a text box. You can have passwords, you can have checkbox, options, radio buttons, a whole 9 yards. That's existed for a while. Some of these other tags are fairly new, like field set, legend, and label. And if we go down here far enough, I think we're probably going to see something that's going to say input, submit. Boy, this is a lot longer than I thought. There's input, submit, and that interacts with that form tag in the HTML page that's identified with it. When we hit the submit button, it processes the information on the page. There's no JavaScript with this one, but there could be. And then from there, it'll navigate to that page that's up on the form tag. And that's talked about in the book also. We may see it in the slide too. All right, so that's the HTML. That's what the form looks like. That field set puts that nice block around everything. The legend shows the category information up on top. This was something that wasn't built in before, and it really makes a much more attractive screen here. as we use it for data entry or for looking up data. Input can be text area. It can be text. Text is a box of data, single line. Text area is multiple rows, like a block of data. There's some examples here in the sample HTML file I gave with us, a textbook, and also here's a screenshot of it with some of the information delineated on the screenshot or the PowerPoint. Again, if these PowerPoints are kind of tough to read running from the video, you can always download these from Canvas and look at them yourself, either stopping the video and going back and look at it, or just looking at them after the video is over. Let's see here. Again, a lot of options. You can play around with this as much as you want. Some other news features they've added was something called placeholder, which gives you kind of a default value or start value. It's like a hint as to what should exist in that particular control. There's some examples of that here. Checkbox is just that. It lets you check off information, indicate that particular, whatever's next to it usually describes a checkbox, indicating that is in fact activated. One of the things that a lot of people get confused on is the difference between checkboxes and radio buttons. Radio buttons are mutually exclusive, which means only one can be selected, whereas checkbox, multiple choices could be selected. I like to use the example of checkboxes applying to pizza toppings, whereas option buttons might be better for gender, male or female. Obviously, you can only pick one, but when it comes to pizza toppings, you could have cheese, pepperoni, meatball, or any combination thereof. So you don't want your checkboxes or your pizza toppings to be mutually exclusive. That's something that's done with a radio button. Here's some checkbox code. I'll let you look at that online. I just saw when we went through the other example to look for the submit, but it's there, I know. Okay. Option button we just talked about. This is the mutually exclusive one. This is typically only one option can be selected. Okay. Gender, size, these are the kinds of things that are popular with option buttons, because again, you can only be one size also. All right. Drop-down menus. Typically, drop-down menus using the select element are popular because here's a big example here. You can see this for states or cities or a whole bunch of things, even sizes. The nice thing about drop-down boxes or drop-down menus is that you don't have to worry about validating the data input because it gives you only valid inputs. And also it saves on screen space. Okay, you don't have to use as much screen space as the list boxes and some other controls that are available. The submit button is the button at the bottom of the screen that's going to take that form data, process it, and then the actions indicate where it goes next. In this case, it's going to go to a different web page. There's a lot more that can be done with the processing of the page if you're going to add JavaScript, which is coming up in the next couple of chapters, and some other technologies of which we'll just discuss kind of on the surface. But there's some other things that can also take place behind the scenes here with that submit button. And that is the end of the slides for this unit. So Unit J is now complete. If you have any questions, let me know.